Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to learn more about fraternities at Tulane. My name is Liz Schaefer, and I serve as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Programs. I am proud to work with the 42% of full-time undergraduate students here who belong to one of our 23 Greek letter social organizations. Our department is part of the Division of Student Affairs, and our staff is dedicated to providing an exceptional fraternity experience to our students. To name just a few of the things we do, we provide training to chapter and council officers on issues of organizational management, work with national fraternity and sorority staff and local volunteers to support chapters, give guidance on program and event planning, and collaborate with various campus departments to provide resources and programming on topics such as violence prevention, health and wellness, recreation, and academic support. In this tutorial, we will answer the questions we most commonly hear from parents of students who are considering joining a fraternity. Of course, if after viewing the tutorial you still have questions, please don't hesitate to contact our staff. Tulane has 11 fraternities, each of which is affiliated with a national fraternity. The university affiliate groups are called chapters, so you will hear us and your students refer to either their fraternity or their chapter. All of these groups are grounded in values centered on brotherhood, scholarship, leadership, and service. It's important to note that these are all private organizations that have individual criteria for membership. The university has no control over these criteria or how the chapters apply them. Each fraternity chapter at Tulane belongs to a student-run, staff-advised governing council. The councils are made up of chapters that are similar in size and do similar activities. You can see on your screen the names of each of our fraternities and the councils to which they belong. We have one historically black fraternity, which is part of our National Pan-Hellenic Council, or NPHC. Both its members graduated in spring 2017, so their alumni chapter intends to induct new members this spring. Our other 10 fraternities belong to our Interfraternity Council, or IFC. These groups currently average in size at 63 members. 8 of these fraternities have houses, all of which are owned and managed either by local alumni of the fraternity or by the individual fraternity's National Housing Corporation. These facilities house between 7 and 16 members. The only time a member may be required to live in the fraternity house is if he eventually serves in a particular chapter office, such as president or treasurer. The fraternities primarily use the houses as meeting spaces and a home away from home for their members. 4 of the IFC fraternities provide a limited meal plan for their members at the chapter house, each with a professional chef. The university's dining services office allows members of these fraternities, including new first-year members, to drop down to a less expensive campus-based meal plan that offers a small number of meals to complement those provided at the fraternity house. Many parents worry about the time commitment that joining a fraternity will bring. Like so many things in life, your son will get out of the fraternity what he puts into it. If he chooses to get involved with committees and events early on, he will spend a bit more time. But on average, most new members should expect to spend between 10 and 15 hours per week attending new member education sessions to learn about the organization's history, chapter business meetings, and brotherhood or social events. If your son is already involved in one or more other student organizations, his new fraternity will view that as a benefit, not a hindrance. All our fraternities consider academic achievement to be an essential part of membership. The average GPA of fraternity members has been higher than that of non-fraternity members for at least the last 15 years, and the fraternities compete fiercely with one another for the highest grades. You can view the GPA standings for each organization on our website, greek.tulane.edu, under the About Our Community heading. The costs of fraternity membership are listed on your screen. They vary somewhat by council, and the variance is based on a number of factors, including the size of the group, the number and type of activities they plan each year, and whether or not they have a house or sometimes provide meals for members. Regardless, it's important to note that the first semester of membership is more expensive because of one-time new member fees. Your son will also pay a Greek membership fee to the university each semester via his accounts receivable bill. The fee covers things in 3 basic categories: educational programming for members, social and community programming, and neighborhood relations. As you are probably aware, the university sets and maintains eligibility requirements of students who wish to join a fraternity or sorority. The requirements are straightforward and are listed on your screen. A couple of important notes, though. First is that we hold hard and fast to the minimum requirements and do not make exceptions to them. That means that if your son earns a 2.499 GPA and not a 2.5, he will not be able to participate. It also means that if he completes only 10 hours in the first semester, but Tulane accepted 3 advanced placement credits, he will be able to participate. We take a hard line on the requirements because all our fraternities have these same minimums. So that means we don't make exceptions under any circumstances. Secondly, all potential new members must complete 4 educational requirements before they begin the recruitment or intake process. All first-year students, as well as upperclassmen who have indicated an interest in joining a fraternity, have been receiving monthly emails about the education requirements. If your student has not yet completed those requirements, please encourage him to contact our graduate assistants at greek@tulane.edu for makeup information. Our NPHC fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, brings in new members through a process called membership intake. Typically in early February, the organization will host an informational meeting to help prospective members learn about the programs and activities they do. Following the informational, they will accept membership applications and vote on which applicants to invite to membership. Because Alpha Phi Alpha does not currently have any undergraduate members, their graduate or alumni chapter will conduct intake this spring. Once we know the date of their informational, we will post it on our website. Interfraternity Council fraternities bring in new members through a process called recruitment. Informal IFC recruitment activities take place throughout the fall semester at Tulane, but students may not join until the spring. So you may have heard your son talk about attending recruitment intro events over the last few weeks. During the fall, each IFC fraternity is required to host at least 2 introductory events for interested men. These tend to be pretty casual, and they usually consist of the types of activities the chapters do together: playing video games or intramurals, watching football, etc. We emailed all first-year men about these intro events several times throughout the fall, so hopefully your son took advantage of them as a way to meet fraternity members and start getting a sense of the different groups. From those intro events, and from meeting men in classes, in student organizations, and while going out, the fraternities decide who they are most interested in and form some relationships during the fall. Sometimes that means that first-year men are told they will receive a bid or membership invitation in the spring. But it's important to note that no bids are official until the spring, and only men who meet the eligibility requirements may receive and accept a bid. It's also important to note that many fraternities still recruit heavily in January. Once spring classes begin, IFC recruitment kicks into high gear. Men interested in joining an IFC fraternity do not need to return to school early. That only applies to women participating in Panhellenic sorority recruitment. The men may return to campus when the residence halls open on Sunday, January 14th. During that first week of classes, several fraternities will host recruitment events. These events are primarily focused on first-year students the fraternities haven't met and on transfer students. Not all chapters will host these events. Students may attend recruitment events for as many or as few fraternities as they want, but we encourage them to keep their options open by attending several. On the evening of Monday, January 22nd, we will host our mandatory recruitment convocation for all men who want to join an IFC fraternity. Of course, students who have class at that time are excused from attending convocation. This is also the final day to register for recruitment. On Tuesday through Thursday of that week, chapters will host invitation-only events so they can decide which students to give bids to. Then on Friday the 26th, our staff, along with students from the Interfraternity Council, will issue bids to these students. Earlier that day, we will call any students who have registered for recruitment but who have not received any bids. Some students may receive bids from more than one organization. If your son is one of those students, he will likely know immediately which organization he would like to join. However, if he needs some time to think it through, he has until Monday, January 29th to make that decision. While the overwhelming majority of students who want to join a fraternity at Tulane are able to, sometimes it doesn't work out. We work with our colleagues in other student affairs departments to make sure other options for campus involvement are available shortly after recruitment. The Spring Activities Expo is scheduled for Friday, January 26th in the late afternoon, and attending is a great way to learn about other student organizations on campus that can fill the void if your son hoped to join a fraternity. And finally, it's important to know that not all Tulane students join fraternities in the spring of their first year. If your son is ineligible to participate this year, or if he participates and doesn't receive a bid, he can certainly go through recruitment next spring. As your son goes through recruitment or considers intake, he will likely ask your advice about how to decide which organization he's most interested in. The most important factor in determining this is the fit he feels and his comfort level with the men in the group. The next factor to consider plays into the first, and that is how much the organization's values resonate with your son. All national fraternities were founded on a set of guiding principles, and the members should be able to articulate both the values themselves and how the chapter's activities reflect those values. Encourage your son to ask questions of the members that will help him determine the values that are most important to each fraternity. Having a legacy relationship to an organization can be another factor in helping a student find the right fit. This can be tough if someone in your family is an alumnus of one of our organizations, but we really encourage you to let your son make his own decision about which group is the best fit for him, especially because chapters of the same organization can be very different on different campuses, and even our chapters here at Tulane change over the years. Tulane is not a campus that relies heavily on legacy relationships with alumni members. The great majority of students here don't have a legacy of Greek membership in their families. To the current members, a legacy relationship is an interesting fact about a prospective member. But because it's not something they generally have experienced themselves, it's frankly not as important to them as it is to the family of the potential members. We also want to make you aware of the dangers of your son joining an unrecognized or, quote, underground fraternity. The potential for hazing, alcohol abuse, and all-around trouble is much higher with unrecognized groups. Omega Psi Phi, also known as Omega or the Qs, is an NPHC fraternity that has never had a chapter at Tulane. However, in previous years, some Tulane graduate students who joined Omega at other schools as undergraduates have tried to recruit Tulane students to join the fraternity underground. We have worked with the regional officers of Omega to prevent that behavior when possible. Kappa Sigma or Kappa Sig, Delta Kappa Epsilon or DEEC, and Sigma Alpha Mu or SAMI are all IFC organizations that had active chapters at Tulane in the past. These groups were closed either by their national organization or by the university because they were not willing to live up to our standards. We do not believe that DEEC is actively recruiting, but we do believe that Kappa Sig, which was closed by their national board in August after repeat hazing and alcohol violations, and SAMI, which was closed in 2012 by the university after serious hazing violations, are still operating underground and may be trying to recruit first-year students. They operate without the oversight, training, and education provided by our staff and their national headquarters staff. Your son will be placing himself in danger if he affiliates with either of these groups, and he may also face charges for violating the Code of Student Conduct. Shifting gears a bit, I want to talk a little about alcohol. You have undoubtedly seen the recent news stories about the tragic deaths of fraternity members over the last few months. You are also likely aware that President Mike Fitz and Board of Tulane Chair Doug Hertz recently released a letter calling for the university community to change the campus's culture around alcohol use. We are fortunate that more than 18 months ago, our Vice President for Student Affairs convened a steering committee comprised of Tulane board members, senior administrators, faculty, staff, and alumni chapter advisors to create a long-range plan for Greek life here. That committee has recently shifted its work to focus on ways the Greek community can lead the way in changing the university's alcohol culture. Concurrently, our student leaders have been working with us to make improvements from the inside. Their efforts have resulted in improvements to our potential new member education series and in new initiatives to limit overconsumption of alcohol at fraternity parties. For those of you whose students will join the Greek community, we want to spend some time talking about hazing prevention. The university's definition of hazing is on your screen. Students joining fraternities should understand that their organizations can be held responsible for violating the hazing policy, even if the new members willingly participate in an activity that the university deems inappropriate. Experts have identified 3 general categories of hazing activities. The first is subtle hazing. This includes making new members perform tasks that older members don't have to perform, for example, cleaning up after a meal at the chapter house. Subtle hazing can also include things like making new members, quote, earn the right to wear organization insignia, a forced workout regimen early in the morning, or being expected to camp out for a good spot on the Mardi Gras parade route. Next is harassment hazing. This may include assigning new members to perform pranks or wear silly clothing. It also may include lineups of new members during which they are expected to remember and recite insignificant details about the organization's history or about a particular member. Harassment hazing often includes a variety of demeaning aspects or things that are misogynistic or homophobic. The final type of hazing is violent hazing. This type includes some of the sensational acts you may hear about in media reports: kidnapping new members, physical abuse, paddling, and forced alcohol consumption. At Tulane, subtle hazing and harassment hazing are the most common forms. Pressure to consume alcohol is more common than actual forced drinking, but it is an issue nonetheless. One thing we try to drill into the minds of our students is that there is a very slippery slope involved if they engage in so-called lower order hazing. They often don't know the physical and mental health histories of their new members. For example, pressure drinking can cause serious issues for a new member with a history of depression and anxiety. Another issue is that within an organization, different people can have very different views of what constitutes hazing. What seems harmless to some can seem completely inappropriate and dangerous to others. In 2017, our Office of Student Conduct pursued 3 hazing investigations against fraternities. 2 of those investigations resulted in the organization not being charged with hazing, but instead receiving educational interventions so they could improve their new member programming. The 3rd resulted in our chapter of Phi Kappa Sigma being found not responsible for hazing, but responsible for alcohol violations and being sanctioned. It's important to note that all 3 of these investigations were the result of concerns reported anonymously to the university. Parents sometimes worry that filing a concern report will translate into their students' organization being disciplined harshly. Obviously, if the information we receive and the resulting investigation reveal that unacceptable or dangerous behavior is occurring, the university will discipline the organization accordingly. But I hope these recent outcomes show that concern reports sometimes merely result in opportunities for our staff to work with chapters to help them improve their operations. If at any point during your son's time in a fraternity you have questions about whether he or a friend in a fraternity or sorority is being hazed, there are several resources you can consult. Of course, you can always call and speak to a member of our staff. If you're uncomfortable doing that, you may file an online report at the website tulane.edu/concerns or leave a message on our hazing hotline at 504-862-3111. If you make a report or call to ask a question, you can ask to remain anonymous, but I implore you to give us your contact information so we can contact you with follow-up questions. Parents are often concerned about reporting because they don't want their student to know it was they who called. As a parent myself, I completely understand that concern. However, I assure you that in my 8 years at Tulane, I have never revealed the source of a report about hazing. Nothing is more frustrating and concerning to us than receiving a report that something is happening that shouldn't be, but not having enough information to stop it. Finally, there is a great deal of information available online for parents who want to know more. A list of websites, in addition to greek.tulane.edu, is on your screen, and I encourage you to consult those. Thank you for tuning in. If you have questions that were not answered by this tutorial, please feel free to contact us. We look forward to seeing your sons in the spring.